Welcome to this webinar at the launch of Think Factory Security, Peace and Public Policy Initiatives. In brief, SAPI. SAPI is newly set up think tank launched in October 2021 at the hands of Shri Shekhar Dutt, former Governor and former Defence Secretary, Dr. Sivathanu Pillai, distinguished scientist of DRDO and founder, CEO and Managing Director of BrahMos Aerospace Private Limited, and Shri Arvind Gupta, Director of Vivekananda International Foundation, who had been former Deputy NSA and DG IDSA too. It is the endeavor of SAPI to be a platform to create fresh grounds for cross-pollination of ideas and deliver value to society in the field of security, peace and public policy. In this part, Shri Shekhar Dutt, ex-governor and former deputy NSA and a renowned strategic affairs expert who was the guest of honor at the launching event of SAPI, the Think Factory, shares his ideas and thoughts on the important aspects of security, peace and public policy, especially covering transfer of technology and border management areas.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real big privilege to be here and amongst old friends and colleagues. Also dealing with a subject which is very, very interesting and fairly wide-ranging as Pradeep has laid it out from the manufacturing to equipment handling to border management. That's a very, very big sort of a canvas. This whole idea of developing this body of very big experts on security and policy initiative and the border management, I think is a token of understanding of all this sector by our friend Pradeep Gupta, who has seen it since I think 2001 onwards, along with the former president and former defense.
3-4 onwards.
Yeah. And before that, in his career of the ordnance factories, which were dealing with another 360 degrees of production of everything, land systems, ammunition, the tanks and BMPs and everything that you have. Now, one thing is quite clear, that 21st century India has to be something which is moving the world towards a different kind of a phenomena, and that is understanding the systems, people who have mastered manufacturing or putting system of systems together. We therefore have chosen very, very aptly, and the Honorable Prime Minister has done that not only make in India and Atmanirbhar, but Vishwaguru Bharat. That means reasserting the position which India was, say, 2 million years ago. And it can be done, it should be done. In fact, the world is expecting. Now, we have an extremely good human resource, and that is why I say it is possible. This human resource has developed North America, helped develop North America and Western Europe by putting such people in their academic fields of Indian origin. In fact, the entire IT And the communication revolution has been because of the Indian manpower available in North Americas and Western Europe. We over here have benefited somewhat with that, but a lot of other benefits has to come. And therefore, it is absolutely essential that we change gears into something which will lead us in that direction. And like Dr. Sidhanu Pillai said, that BrahMos wasn't something which was which came without thinking. In fact, my dalliance with the defense or defense ministry started in 1980s, early 80s, when I came as Director Navy. And along with it, I was also given the charge of coordinating integrated missile development projects, IGMDP. And there were 3 or 4 officers with whom I used to deal with. And they were all Kalam's boys. Dr. Saraswat, Dr. Shivthanu Pillai, Avinash. And the Kalam's boys, right from that time, put in a kind of a belief and confidence that we can do it. Because in this sector, in the missile development sector, there were no technologies available. And we had been classified as pariahs by the developed worlds because we undertook the development of an atom, a controlled atomic blast. And then 1999, we did another one. So nobody would give us this kind of technology. 2-stage, 3-stage, 4-stage, 5-stage missiles. Developing cryogenic engines. Solid fuels and liquid fuels, Dr. Pillai has already told. And these were done by the Indian scientists and Indian technologists under heavy, you can say, scrutiny, that we don't get any kind of a technical know-how from anybody. Am I correct, Dr. Pillai? You can raise your hand.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, I was a glad one to be to join as Kalam's boys from the MOD side, and I'm very proud of it. Now, the way all these things were done was taking up an equipment as a part of a system. An equipment like, say, a missile will be of no use unless and until you have a vehicle. And that vehicle had to be designed in order to take that missile and be able to fire from a remote place. So all those kind of things started because we concentrated on the missiles. There was another side which was happening. I was Director Navy. And I found that there was a quaint person from the Navy who is very closely working with the DRDO and Bharat Electronics. His name was Arogyaswamy Paul Raj. He was a Commodore, and then it turned out that he is helping the DRDO to design a sonar. And once the sonar was found and tested that it can work, then he was shifted by Navy into the DRDO. And in DRDO, he designed and he helped design, and this whole DRDO lab of sonar, which is in Cochin. And that was, and this whole thing for different kind of naval warships. frigates, missile boats, destroyers, sonars were put, submarines, sonars were put. Now, 1980s, India became one of the countries which employed India-made sonars in all our Indian warships. So 1985, 86, this whole production went on. I had gone back to my cadre. I came back in 1991. By that time, Arogyasamy Paul Raj had completed all this work, and then he
Stanford.
Stanford
University.
And went away to Stanford. About 3 or 4 years ago, he got Marconi Award, which is equivalent to Nobel Prize in electronics. An Indian teacher, naval officer, DRDO scientist, and he went and he got Marconi Award. So what I'm saying is that Indian manpower has been in the driver's places at different organizations in North America, West Europe, and we ought to sort of make use of them and come back into this thing. Whether they're working outside or not is not material, but the whole thing is to be able to design. And I again take Dr. Suttanu Pillai's word that design is one of the crucial aspects of manufacture, because even what you get as TOT, you learn, you know how, you obtain the know-how, you learn. But thereafter, for Mark 1, Mark 2, and then modeling a next model, upgraded model. Everybody knows about F-16. The F-16 is a superstructure of 1960s. And every now and then, a few years, they improve the suite inside the canopy of F-16, whether it is radars, whether it is fire control, whether it is a weapon delivery system, whether it is target acquisition, all these kind of different facilities are upgraded, and an F-16 becomes a new animal with new lethal teeth or horns or whatever. And that is the way upgradation is done. And upgradation is another field in which the user, the designer, the manufacturer, and the designer all work together. And with that, an upgradation is done. Many times, an upgradation throws up a completely new variety of equipment. But some of the best equipments which have served the armed forces or even the civilian sector has been upgradation with the minimum changes, so that you have product support, you have all the other things. For manufacturing, you require capital equipment. The same capital equipment should be able to manufacture the upgraded version. And therefore, a very close linkage between the user and the manufacturer's production specialist and the designer is necessary. I would say that some of the things which we call dual use are very much essential to be sort of seen. And by dual use, what we mean is that it can be used in the civilian sector as well as in the military sector. When I joined the armed forces, or when I joined even in the government, we used to have this thing that for military, you require military specification or mil spec. By the turn of the century, mil spec disappeared, and the civilian sectors started getting extremely good and recognized parts, so that it can be deployed, the equipment can be deployed in all terrain and all weathers. Now, therefore, dual use items become very much essential or very much important. I'll give an example. The biggest project in India right now is national highways. Every day, more than 30 kilometers of class 7 or class 9 roads are being built. 5 abreast vehicles can move on either side. India is a country which has enormous tracks which are known as off country or off road, because we have mines, we have rural areas, we have agricultural land, we have forest land. So our vehicles which ply on these national highways are 8-axle, 10-axle, 12-axle vehicles, sometimes going cross country. What kind of tires does it have? Where are these tires designed? Where are the materials of this tire designed? We've got different kind of soil. We have a combination of soil, black cotton soil, red laterite soil, the different aluminous soil, and we require different type of tires, but we can't change tires. So the material of the tire become very important, and depending upon the material, you have the efficiency of the diesel or petrol use. Now, on the other hand, these 8-axle, 10-axle, 12-axle vehicles require huge engines. Are we designing those engines? If not, why not? We should be designing those engines. We should be manufacturing those kind of vehicles. These are called juggernauts. Juggernaut is a anglicized word of Jagannath. And since Rath was Jagannath's, these juggernauts ply on these heavy these roads, taking 95% of Indian imports and again 98% of Indian exports on these roads. And these vehicles, these juggernauts, are not owned by the government. There is no government purchase rules for these vehicles. So if we are able to make this, then we can make tank engines, we can make BMP engines, we can make different kind of military vehicles. So these are called dual use. There are many other connotations of dual use, I mean, in the nuclear field and all that, but I'm going on the dual use of strictly military and civil. So we have to learn, we have extremely good labs for materials. In fact, but they have to be scaled up. DRDO has a lab. DRDO also has a lab on the designing of the tires. It's called VRDE. Now, but there are no other labs of that nature or tracks of that nature in the civil street. We have to have that so that tires can be designed, the cars or automobiles can be designed to ply on Indian. Once the Indian requirement is met, we can fan out and go for export. India gives a tremendous benefit. We have a huge market. Right now, I would dare say not more than 30% of the Indian market has been captured. We still have at least 50% of Indian market to go and own and put our FMCGs, put our designed equipment on the road. And once we do that, and India market is a competitive market. So once we do that, we will have enough competition, enough ability to meet the challenges of the world and go and market in the world. Likewise, I have seen one of the most important lessons which I learned immediately after 1980s when I joined as Director Navy was that Navy is the only force which has a design directorate. So there is a post called Director General Naval Design, DGND. Practically all our naval ships have been designed in India and have been assembled in the Indian shipyards. So much so that once we started doing this, and I was involved in this thing, that at one time, 3 destroyers, 5 Brahmaputra class frigates, and 11 missile boats were being made in these 3 shipyards. And there's a 4th shipyard of the civil. Now, we realized that we are importing steel. So we asked SAIL, can SAIL turn its production and make naval vessels grade steel? And after some time they did. And now most of the steel which is required in the warship production is made from India. With is basically alloy of aluminum and steel and tungsten and titanium and other things. Now, why I'm saying it is that India has a tremendous ability. We ought to be manufacturing tankers. We ought to be manufacturing bulk carriers because 98% of India's import comes down by the sea route. And Abhi, just now Arvind said this, that we are thinking of the whole maritime domain to be looked after by one body. Now, this kind of ability to be able to manufacture very large different kinds of vessels on the sea would have a straightaway spin-off benefit that our Navy would get. Andaman is not just a floating, not floating, stationary aircraft carrier, but Andaman is a huge resource. In fact, we are sitting on the mouth of Malacca Straits. Enormous numbers of ships, enormous number. World's largest numbers of ships go from the south of just a few kilometers south of Andaman through the Malacca Strait to the Japanese, to the Koreans, to the Chinese, to the Eastern Russia, taking oil and many other valuable things. They require a place where they can be serviced. So we should offer them, or we should have these kind of servicing yard at Andamans, and thereby, in fact, when I finished Indo-American framework for defense, before that there were no tie between India and America for defense cooperation. So this was finalized in 2005. And immediately Indo-German, Indo-Japan, Indo-Australia opened up because they were all waiting for America to give a nod. So I went to Japan. The Japanese, in fact, the Americans had told me to learn from the Japanese the art of designing, because America has, US and Japan have a 50-50% relationship in designing products. With all other countries, America has far more, it might be 70-30, 60-40, 80-20, like that. Now, the Japanese showed me the civil aeroplane, Boeing and Airbus and similar airplanes engine, which are, they have a company for MRO of that. And all kinds of engine, GE, Pratt and Whitney, all kinds of engine, Rolls-Royce, every engine comes over there. Japanese, by doing the MRO, know everything about that engine. So at a whiff, the Japanese can really manufacture an engine if they want. That's the point. So you do start from the other end. If you do MROs, you'll be able to learn about the intricate engineering of the engine and similarly of the superstructure. In fact, Indian aircrafts go to Japan to get their engine or aircraft have their MROs. I found that a clever man does not require to spend his or her own riches, all the riches that you have, but spend it wisely, and that's why you are clever. And the Japanese, at that point of time, that company's turnover in a year was $16 billion. $16 billion by just doing engine MROs of aircraft engines. Now imagine the kind of knowledge that we can have if we do these kind of things. We should take all our juggernauts which are flying in the Indian roads. We should try and design and manufacture, and then see the spin-offs in other fields of automobiles. We should use the entire 7,500 kilometers of coastline that we have. Imagine the kind of coastal traffic which can have. We can have, in fact, there was a seminar which was organized by the FICCI, the CII of Chennai, which is coordinated by a former naval officer, about inland waterways and coastal shipping. The entire inland waterways would serve India. Entire coastal shipping will serve India. And if you do that, we will have we'll develop enormous capability. Because everybody knows that transportation by land is very costly. Transportation by water is cheaper because the water provides less resistance. And therefore it makes sense. Germany, 80% of Germany's industrial produce comes out of inland waterways. 0.3% of Indian produce, Indian engineering produce, comes through the inland waterways of India. And India is a land of rivers. In fact, so many rivers crisscrossing India. But many times when I used to fly by helicopters or low-flying aircraft, we find India brown, not green. India has to be green. Now, India can be only green if our rivers and our rivulets have water. And this can be done just through managing our rivers and waterways. And this can be done. And I think 21st century India deserves, we owe it to our grandchildren and their grandchildren that Indian rivers must have water. Just a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks ago, I went to Ahmedabad, and the Sabarmati, at the coast of Sabarmati, they had this function called the celebration of the flame, victory flame of 1971 war, which was being done, and I had been invited for that. And that celebration was done on the coast of Sabarmati. Now, Sabarmati, about 10 years ago, didn't have water. But they have designed now in a way that Narmada water comes into Sabarmati and it remains full of water. And we should do this. We have got the world's largest numbers of reservoirs. So with balanced water supply from the reservoirs, our rivers and rivulets must have enough water so that we can have inland waterways. And the more we can then have a production which will be cost effective and which can sustain itself. India has to become a maritime country. All our coastal ports or even coastal places should have marinos, where from a large number of vessels which will go out in the sea. And mind you, 21st century, and I would dare say 22nd, 23rd century will be those for those countries which have been able to exploit the sea near them. We are very lucky that we've got such a huge coastline. And we ought to. Now, all this would give us a chance of designing different equipment, designing different systems, which would enable India to prosper. So it would be a huge, I would say, one should never think X-axis or Y-axis or even Z-axis. This thing, one should see our development in the form of a sphere and 360 degrees and just keep on extending in all directions so that the sphere becomes large, the volume becomes large, Indian influence becomes large and larger. So I'm sure that it can be done, but we have to make use of and create a demand in those areas where there is no demand because people think that, oh, we are of no consequence. Create a demand. And there are so many possibilities. We all know today we are going on in a massive spree of making solar and wind energy. So in 2015, there was this COP21 at Paris, and I was there. The first day, our Honorable Prime Minister came and he said, the climate change is affecting the world and India is going to take a lead, and we will have 175 gigawatts, meaning 175,000 megawatts of power coming from renewables, that is solar and wind. And so the work is going on. Right now, we are ahead of the target. So we are almost over 100 gigawatts, which is 100,000 megawatts of new generation. But the solar modules, silicon, they're not manufactured in India. And even if they're manufactured from cells, which again require polysilicon. We have got a bhandar of silicon, if Dr. Sipthanu from your state, from Kerala. And we ought to be doing, and we ought to make it more profitable. And it can be done, provided the demand is so large that it becomes profitable. So we have to manufacture this polysilicon. We have to manufacture, again, we don't have that. We have to manufacture semiconductors. And if we don't, we are vulnerable. But if we have, and mind you, the world of 360 degrees, the sphere is very large. Our demand is very large. So if we produce, it becomes cost effective. So we have to do that. America used to manufacture for the world, and later on, America discarded this, and those second-hand production was taken by the Chinese, and the Chinese started manufacturing. Now the Chinese have also discarded, and Malaysia, Vietnam, and all other Taiwan and all those countries are manufacturing. India should be manufacturing semiconductors. And once we do that, we have our own systems. And that would enable India to be really one up. Because tomorrow, again, another thing which I told a few days ago, and please understand this, India is perhaps the only country of the world which has security reasons that India has to be one up over its neighbors. Security reasons, primarily because of our Western neighbor, Pakistan, and also China is not, China sees greater benefits to working with Pakistan, and therefore hostile Pakistan and not so friendly China causes India to be absolutely careful and be sure that nobody can damage India's security position. Therefore, we have to have our own systems, our own capability, and our own designed chips. If we don't, then our enemy, and if the enemy is smart, and I'm sure that the enemy is smart, they'll put a bug in these chips. And we will, our transportation, our communication, our financial, all these areas are vulnerable. As far as defense is concerned, our electronic systems, we have a small capacity, and similarly in Bangalore and another in Hyderabad. So we are okay, but this is not for the entire other systems. And all other systems are also very, very important for our security. So my point is that Indian market itself is a very big market, and we should take benefit of that market and start manufacturing by designing our requirement or involving other manufacturers to put their wherewithal here, but they must bring in technology and we must do the upgrades here. And once we do that, Indian scientific community is such that we will be able to take on and produce new and newer type of equipment. I haven't touched many other things. India has the 4th largest pharmaceutical bunch of industries, and the largest numbers of patients. So we should be able to now, I mean, see how well India has been able to produce its vaccine, and we've had a huge numbers, 100 crore people vaccinated by Indian vaccines, Indian-made vaccines. So we can do it. And we don't have to actually learn from others, but we can do it and we have to do it and we must do it. So with that, this is a very novel initiative which our friend Pradeep has taken. And I thank all of you to be present in this important this thing. I wish General Bhatia had also spoken, and there are others also. I wish, if you have time, Pradeep, I would rather ask General Bhatia to speak because he's been DGMO and a thinker and a doer and a user. And the user would be the best person to lead new products. So with that, thank you very much. And you have enabled me to see Dr. Shivthanu Pillai after many days. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Shekhar Dutt sir, for a very enlightening session and truly covering this from so many perspectives that it's really, I do not think there could be a more holistic perspective of looking at this entire thing. So we really thank you for your thoughts as well as the overall suggestions provided for SAPI.